When I was growing up, which was down in South Orange County in a small city of Aliso Viejo, I grew up during a time in where there was a slow shift, me being a millennial, from playing outside and then from playing on our phones or tablets, right? So I had that little bit of experience to be able to have that where mom says, okay, now just go outside, go play, and then at this time come back home and then we'll have dinner. And so one of the things that we did with the group of friends that I had in our neighborhood there was we didn't really have a name for it, but we just called it the treasure hunt. So what we would do is there was a group of us, we would assign one person to take some sort of treasure and then hide it somewhere in the neighborhood and actually draw up this whole map and then hand it out to all of our group of friends there, and then we would then go and try to find, this treasure, and whatever it was, whoever found it first, we were able to keep, as well. And so it was a really fun game, and I remember one of the funniest things about it was I remember I'm not much of a drawer, so I kind of didn't draw things to scale. So I had the house was like this big, it was supposed to be this big, or the street was like this wide when it was like this wide. So there were times where we would actually have a lot of trouble finding the treasure. And then we would have to tell, the other person, okay, it's actually over there, because the map, nobody was able to read it. But it was such a fun game, for us, is to be able to find treasure, right? And I'm sure that maybe many of us, have had that, maybe not that direct opportunity, but the games that we play or the things that we do, there's something about that inquisitive or inquiry of being able to attain treasure, to attain something that maybe we really desire. And so I want us to really turn to what are the treasures that you hold in your hearts? What are some of those treasures that you have in your life? It could be family, it could be friends, it could be your work, it could be physical things. We could probably name a bunch of things that are our treasure. Now just imagine if the Lord says, now give that to me. The readings that we have dispersed today are this incredible story in the first reading about this prophet Elijah. I was over at the parish that I'm in residence right now, St. Elizabeth Ann Seton, and Bishop Timothy Fryer was the one that celebrated the Mass over there. And he was sharing about, what he would do in, this case of, say, he was the widow, in this story. And I also put myself in that situation. Just think about this widow. This widow who was out gathering sticks, probably for the fire to, cook whatever she needed to cook, and also the little bit of flour that she had to be able to feed her son. The whole context of her really cooking the Last Supper for her family. Because you hear in the story, she's preparing all this and saying to Elijah that we're going to eat all this meal and then we're going to die. Elijah, this strange man, as Bishop Tim calls it, goes up to this woman and says, give me everything here. Now, I put myself in that position. I'd be like, boy, what are you doing? I would have kind of a predicament there. I wouldn't know what to do because on one level, I have to feed my child for this last meal. And then at the same time, this man who seems to be, and Elijah was this prophet who was on this long journey, so, he was probably looking like he's really hungry and needing all these things, a treasure. But this man comes and asks. And what does this widow do? She actually complies in that. And then what happens? She is abundantly filled with the flour to be able to cook for her son for the whole year, to make bread or whatever it was that God provided. And then in the gospel reading today, we see this poor widow as well going into the temple basically and giving the donation and gives everything that she has. We didn't read the long version today, but the long version speaks about this whole aspect of all the scribes were so busy on the material things, to the way that they look, about their treasures, that they forgot about the inside and the heart. But this poor widow, she gave from her heart everything that she had. And so with this, it brought up another image for me in terms of treasure. And I actually stumbled across this probably about like 3 or 4 years ago, this image. I found it on Facebook. I think I was just, a night scrolling through the news feed, and just came across this beautiful image. And it was during Lent. It was this picture of Jesus and this little girl. And this little girl is holding a teddy bear. You can see that the way that she's holding this teddy bear is something that she treasured, is something that she loves. And then Jesus on the other side, so, the girl's holding the bear like this, and Jesus is on the other side looking at her, kind of down on her level. And so he holds out his hand like this. And as he's holding out his hand, it looks like what you would think. Please, give me that teddy bear. And then there's a bubble over their heads. And so the bubble over the little girl's head, it says, but Jesus, I really love it. And then above Jesus' head, or did I say the little girl, it says that, and then above Jesus' head, it says, trust me. And then, if you look at the other hand, his other hand is held behind his back, and he's holding a teddy bear way bigger than the one that she has. And I remember that image really stuck with me for the rest of Lent, because on one level, Lent, we're called to sacrifice, we're called to, penance, and within that penance, there's some big reward that comes with it. And so this image here, doesn't it look like the image that we have just encountered in the readings here today? And now, have you encountered that in your own life? On this National Vocations Awareness Week, again, I'm also called to really think, about my own vocation, and also the vocation of the whole diocese, being the director of vocations. And so, of course, I try to draw from my experience. And when I was thinking about that, I had my life, as I said, I grew up here, in South County. I actually went through all the schools in Aliso Viejo, literally all the schools in Aliso Viejo, because we moved like 2 or 3 different times. And at the time, it was an establishing city, so wherever we moved, as in public school, you basically go to the school that you're basically zoned in. So I went to 5 different schools from K to 8th grade, from all the different schools around Aliso Viejo. But in any case, I went to schools here, and when I graduated from high school, Aliso Niguel High School, I went to Irvine Valley College, which is right down the street, from here. I was studying computer engineering, and just like any young man thinking about success, I was wanting to have a beautiful family. I was wanting to have success in monetary value, financially, making sure I had a good job. I even had all that stuff lined up for me. I talked to my dad, who was an IT manager at Torrance Police Department, told him, like, hey, hook it up, Dad. Hey, I'm your son, And so I'm talking to him thinking, like, okay, I have this all set up. And he actually had a job lined up for me. And here I am at IVC getting ready to transfer to Cal State Long Beach. Go Beach, 49ers. But I ended up, after my second year, it was like that little image that I shared with you. So that little teddy bear that I held in my hands, I actually have a real teddy bear too, but I'm going to say that out loud right now. But not that teddy bear, the teddy bear of my treasure. I was holding that value of, again, success, of family, of friends, and all that in my hands. And then God comes into my life and says, give that to me. And I'm like, no, I love it. I love this teddy bear. I love this vocation. And then he says, trust me. And I remember it was hard. It was tough. It was tough for me to trust. But then I made that choice because I had felt and experienced God's love in such a powerful way through a witness story of a priest. The priest shared his story. And what I remember is that what I held in my hand, what I thought was treasure, was not the treasure, even though it was the treasure that I desired, but is not what the treasure that God desired for me. That as I continued to discern that vocation, I found that my desire was for the love of God the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. And that the only way I could be able to experience that was God's call for me in the service as a priest. And now I know that it's not just about my own fulfillment, but I have found so much fulfillment in this call that, many times in the seminary, I'm sure Father Tony can probably attest as well, there are some tough days. There are days where you doubt, your vocation. But I always draw back to that moment in where Jesus came to me with that big old teddy bear behind his back and me holding that little one in my hands and saying, "Trust me." And so, my dear friends, God has called each of us to a very special vocation. And within that vocation, He wants to share with you marvelous treasures. Treasures that are beyond our wildest imagination. How have we taken that step or that leap of faith like this widow did in the first reading? And also this other poor woman in the Gospels that trusted in the Gospel, trusted in Jesus. And then in the first reading, this widow who trusted in the prophet Elijah, who is a messenger of God. This priest that I mentioned to you was the messenger of God to me. That he gave me the invitation to help dig deeper into the treasures that God has in store. And so he gave me that treasure map. My dear friends, God has something very special for all of you. Whatever your vocation is, in marriage, in religious life, consecrated life, in diocesan priesthood, or life in ministry, there's those beautiful treasures. But may the material things of that not cloud or blind our judgment to what the true treasure is the love of God and His salvation. The second reading really encapsulates that, this whole sense that Jesus came into the world. God gave His most beautiful treasure to us, His Son, and that we experience that treasure every time we come to Mass here at this altar. And we know we can't have the Eucharist without priests, and so I ask you to pray for our seminarians and pray for priests and pray for more priests on this week of National Vocations Awareness Week. But I also invite you, which is not selfish, to pray for your own vocation, that you may live to the fullness of that vocation, that you can be able to experience the great treasures that God desires for each and every single one of you. And I believe that as a priest, whether it be here at the Mass or people reach out to me for spiritual direction or in confessional or the moments that we distribute the Holy Communion to all of you, I've seen such great treasure and great hope that has been experienced through other people as well. And that can also be a part of your own vocation because God calls us to something more. So my dear friends, let us open our hearts because He has such great treasure waiting for you. Let us open that treasure chest and trust in Him and give Him that treasure, that teddy bear, whatever that is in our hearts to Him, because He will provide so abundantly to all of you.